Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. Indigenous peoples continue to be overrepresented as homicide victims. That's according to the latest look at homicide trends by Statistics Canada. StatsCan says the heightened risk of homicide for Indigenous peoples is deeply rooted in the ongoing effects of colonization, including systemic discrimination, poverty, and a legacy of trauma. In 2023, just over 1 in 4 victims of homicide in Canada were Indigenous, despite representing just 5% of the overall population. The report says the homicide rate for Indigenous peoples is 6 times higher than the rate for non-Indigenous Canadians. In 2023, police services reported 778 homicides across the country. That's 104 fewer victims than the year before. Thunder Bay recorded the highest homicide rate, followed by Winnipeg and Chilliwack. Also, according to StatsCan, roughly 1/4 of homicides in Canada are gang-related. The cities of Thunder Bay, Winnipeg, and Chilliwack lead the way in that category. This week, the Alberta Serious Incident Response Team, or ACERT, released their findings on the shooting of an Indigenous man from 2020. ACERT's mandate is to investigate potential misconduct in police and RCMP. Their report indicates that 51-year-old Barry Glenn Cardinal called 911 several times on September 20th, 2020, and asked the operator if they wanted a shootout. He asked the police to come with firearms and to take him out. Athabasca RCMP responded to the scene in Calling Lake, Alberta. Witnesses say Cardinal was drinking heavily and was mentally distraught. The report says Cardinal raised his rifle and an RCMP officer fired several times. He died on scene. ACERT's report says the shooting was done in accordance to proper protocols and there was no wrongdoing by the officer. YWCA Canada has apologized for their involvement in residential schools and Indian hospitals. A summary report of the organization's participation was released earlier this week. Researchers commissioned by the association found that the YWCA helped shape residential school curriculums and facilitated recreational programs aimed at assimilating Indigenous peoples into European Canadian society. The organization worked with Indian hospitals on rehabilitation programs in the 1950s and provided housing for Indigenous girls and women with the goal of cultural assimilation. The YWCA was also part of the federal Indian Placement and Relocation Program, which sought to control Indigenous peoples' involvement in the labor force. CEO Elaine Nizagama says the next step is connecting to survivors.
There's a plan currently right now to work through our newly created Department of Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation. It's also going to be doing a lot of equity work, and we are looking to engage with survivors in communities that we know our member associations were. And we are looking forward to undertaking that work in respectful dialogue, but that is work that is ongoing right now.
Earlier this year, the Kaska Nation appealed a Yukon Supreme Court decision on a proposed mining project on its asserted territory. In a decision released last week, the Yukon Court of Appeal sided with the Kaska, saying that it hadn't been properly consulted about the project. As Sarah Connors tells us, the Kaska are calling it a big win.
The Ross River Dinna Council is celebrating a recent court decision on BMC Minerals' proposed Kutsakaya mine. Yukon's Court of Appeal found that territorial and federal governments failed to consult the Kaska on the project's economic feasibility.
We felt a relief. We felt, happy with the Court of Appeal's decision.
The Ross River Dinna Council, on behalf of the Kaska Nation, appealed a Yukon Supreme Court decision released earlier this year. That decision found the governments mostly upheld their duty to consult the Kaska when approving the mine to the next stage in 2022. But the Kaska argued the judge erred in her decision. They said a lot was at stake during a rally in September when the appeal was heard.
The caribou that sustain us, that's why I'm here today.
The open pit copper, zinc, and lead project is located in a core area for the Fennelson caribou herd. But the government's refused to consult with the Kaska about the economic feasibility of the project, something they said would be discussed later on. However, the appeal court said that was unreasonable.
The economics of the whole project is, it brings a lot of uncertainty.
The appeal court ordered the governments to thoroughly consult with the Kaska about the project's economic feasibility before it can be approved. BMC Minerals says it's disappointed the project will be delayed, but respects the court's decision.
We've always been of the view that we want to have all the questions answered and everyone heard, especially Kaska.
Once the governments consult with the Kaska on the topic of economic feasibility, it will reissue a decision on whether or not the mine can proceed. Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
Still in the Yukon, it's been almost 6 months since a mining disaster took place in the North Central Territory. Now the First Nation at the center of the incident's looking to the Auditor General of Canada to help it hold governments accountable. Here's APTN's Sarah Connors once more with the details on that story.
The First Nation of Nacho-Nayakdun is calling on Auditor General Karen Hogan to look into Yukon government's handling of the Eagle Gold Mine incident. It also wants Hogan to investigate broader issues surrounding mineral management in the territory. Victoria Gold's Eagle Gold Mine is located on Nacho-Nayakdun's traditional territory near Mayo, Yukon. On June 24th, 4 million tons of cyanide-laced ore slid down a mountainside heap embankment. While the mine is now in receivership, cyanide continues to seep into the groundwater, which is now reaching nearby Haggard Creek. Nacho-Nayakdun says Haggard Creek is an essential habitat for many fish species, including critically sensitive Chinook salmon. Yukon government launched an independent review board to look into the technical causes of the heap leach failure in late August. But Nacho-Nayakdun says that's not good enough, and it wants a public inquiry to scrutinize the role the territorial government had in the incident. It's also asking Hogan to examine what it calls Yukon and Canada's failure to uphold the processes and promises of federal devolution. Nacho-Nayakdun says the territory has yet to develop new mineral legislation consistent with Indigenous rights and modern mineral management. The Auditor General's office says it's reviewing Nacho-Nayakdun's request and will respond when it completes its assessment. Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
Thanks, Sarah. Potential relief for millions of Canadians as the Canada Post strike could end as early as next week. Canada's Labour Minister today asking a federal board to review the state of negotiations, which could pave the way to a back-to-work order.
The review could provide the basis of a path forward on how to amend the collective agreements and clarify the structures, rights, and responsibilities of the parties in collective bargaining.
Steve McKinnon says Canada Post and the union are at an impasse, and Canadians are rightfully fed up. Under the process, terms of the existing agreements would be extended to May 22nd of next year. Cup W National President Jan Simpson is not pleased with the minister's decision. It looks like a big blow for the Métis Nation of Ontario and Métis Nation Alberta. The latest on Bill C-53 after the break. Welcome back. It appears for all intents and purposes, Bill C-53 is dead. This is the embattled federal legislation that was supposed to formally recognize Métis governments in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Ontario. But First Nations have been speaking out against the legislation for over a year, and it's also being heavily criticized by the Manitoba Métis Federation. Earlier this year, the Métis Nation Saskatchewan also withdrew its support. Here to give us the latest on the situation is APTN Ottawa Bureau reporter Fraser Needham. Fraser, thanks for being with us. We understand you received a statement from Crown Indigenous Relations, the Minister's office, on C-53 earlier today. What did that say?
Well, it was a fairly vague statement, but basically said that the current legislation, or Bill C-53, cannot move forward in its current form. And I think what they're talking about, of course, is the Métis Nation of Saskatchewan withdrawing earlier this year, and also the federal court case with the Métis Nation of Alberta, where it said it had not properly consulted all Métis organizations in the province or communities before signing on to the agreement.
It seems like this would be a pretty big blow to the Métis Nation of Ontario and Métis Nation Alberta. What are you hearing there?
Yeah, for sure for the Métis Nation of Ontario, basically because they've been sort of the point of that really the First Nations in Ontario have come out hard on this, don't see them as legitimate. It's the same thing for the Manitoba Métis Federation. So they they sort of in a response sort of said that they are going to continue on, that their self-government agreement guarantees legislation at the right time. And also for the Métis Nation of Alberta, I think they took particular umbrage, I guess, with the statement actually mentioned this federal court case. And they quote here, what I have is they found the whole process to be delayed, disrespectful, and demoralizing, and they want Canada to recognize them as a Métis government and move forward as such.
Fraser, just lastly here, anybody else you're hearing from today on this?
No, actually, a lot of organizations don't really, all I was able to get is these statements, and of course, the Manitoba Métis Federation has been strangely silent, which usually has had quite a bit to say. Chiefs of Ontario didn't really want to say much after releasing that statement, and nothing back from the Métis National Council, so it's been pretty quiet.
Well, Fraser, appreciate you bringing us up to date. We'll talk soon. You can find more on that story over on our website. A Cree busker wants to make downtown Winnipeg a safer place, one song at a time. Reporter Sierra Bettens chats with Dwayne Davey about his campaign to revitalize the city's busking scene.
During the lunch rush, busker Dwayne Davey serenades Winnipeg's working crowd. This small skywalk between the downtown food court and Winnipeg's Millennium Library is his year-round stage.
I've gotten nothing but positive response from all the security, paramedics, police, like you name it, all walks of life. Just hearing music in the morning, like it brightens their day.
His guitar gives him power. It helps him connect with passers-by.
That a lot of people are grieving. They're grieving from people lost to COVID, to opiates, drugs, and drinking. And I meet a lot of them here. Like, I call this guitar as like grief work.
It's also a de-escalation tool.
They walk into that corridor, they stop, they'll hear a song, they'll hear it, and they'll sit down, like sit there and just be quiet and listen to the music. When they leave that hall, they're not angry anymore.
Now, Davey and a team of musicians are campaigning to make busking a part of Winnipeg's downtown safety strategy. They've purchased a domain, winnipegbuskers.ca, to build a forum, and they hope to get the city and community organizations on board.
What we're hoping to is gather the singers not only from Winnipeg, but in Manitoba. Like if you're up north and you're coming to the city and maybe you want to try out singing, like come down, sign up on our website. And what we want to do is primarily create some sort of association.
Davey, originally from Moose Factory, Ontario, says he's one of the few Indigenous buskers in Winnipeg. He estimates that 90% of downtown buskers are male.
And we were wondering, like, where's all the female singers? And apparently that they don't feel safe, like, singing downtown.
His plan, connect them with security buddies to make them feel safer.
We'd like to create a security system for them, like a buddy system, security system.
While he's become a fixture at the Skywalk, he dreams of having a dedicated space for musicians.
We could have our own artist area, because they have some for painters, but there's nothing really for singers. And there's a lot of lease spots available. We could something we could look at.
With plans to launch the project in the new year, Davey hopes it will revitalize the scene while boosting safety downtown.
But we need native singers, we need non-native singers. We need to collaborate, and hopefully out of this website we can get something going in the new year, something positive, and bring this vibe back to Winnipeg, which used to exist here at one point.
Sierra Bettens, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Well, your Facebook feed has probably been filled with people taking in their community dinners. Our TR Wheatley got in on the action today. That story and more coming up after the break. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. Victor Chegas enjoyed the first big snowfall for Winnipeg this year and thought to share the view with all of us. Thanks for that, Victor. If you take a great photo this weekend, you should think of us too and send that photo to share@aptn.ca. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, -3 in Halifax, sunny and 4 below for Fredericton. -7 and snow in Kuujjuaq, 2 below with snow for Happy Valley, Goose Bay. Sunny and -7 in Montreal, sun's out and 12 below in Val-d'Or. -1 with snow in Sault Ste. Marie, sunny and 7 below in North Bay. -2 in Thunder Bay, flurries and 7 below in Sioux Lookout. -10 with snow in God's Lake, 8 below and flurries in Norway House. Cloudy and -13 in Winnipeg, sun's out and 7 below for Dauphin. -6 in Regina, -3 in Saskatoon and North Battleford. -10 in Meadow Lake, 18 below in Stony Rapids. In northern Alberta, -14 and snow in High Level, flurries and 15 below in Fort Chip. -3 in Edmonton, 9 above in Lethbridge. 7 in Vancouver, showers and 9 for Victoria. 0 with snow in Prince George, flurries and -2 in Smithers. -28 in Old Crow, snow and 11 below in Whitehorse. -26 in Yellowknife, 34 below in Norman Wells. -20 in Sax Harbor, 19 below in Paulituck. -26 with snow in Chesterfield and Whale Cove. -23 in Resolute, 24 below with snow in Joe Haven. With Christmas nearly upon us, Indigenous groups are opening their doors in the spirit of the season. In Winnipeg, the Treaty 1 Development Corporation spent a day sharing good cheer and good news about Nawe-Odena, the biggest urban reserve in Canada, being built on an old army base. Getting the land wasn't easy, though. It took more than a decade in court before the base was turned over to the 7 Treaty 1 First Nations in 2022 under Treaty Land Entitlement. TR Wheatley stopped by the event and joins us now.
Thank you. So we're here at the Treaty 1 Development Corporation, and they are having an open house today. Here is the Chief Development Officer, Cody. Tell me a little bit about today.
So today we just, we have an open house every year, and we invite our community members, the Treaty 1 members, and Winnipeg as the whole out to kind of come and see our office and, hear and ask questions about what we're doing. We really like to be open at Treaty 1, and we don't like to hide things from our members, and we want them to be informed about what we're doing with the land at Nawe-Odena.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that land, some of the stuff that's coming up, the development there.
Yeah, for sure. So we're currently working on Block A. It's the smallest parcel of land, just over 7 acres, on the northeast corner of Kenniston and Taylor Avenue. We're developing the infrastructure is going in and going in on time, and there's a gas station being built right now. It should be open sometime in early March. And then after that, we have a few exciting projects going in the ground in spring. A retail building on Block A, and on the other side, on the northwest side of Kenniston and Taylor, we actually have a 260 unit apartment block that's going to be going into the ground with about 60 units that are affordable flex housing. So
Yeah, exciting news. I mean, this land, we've been talking about getting it for a long time, so it's been a long time coming. What's some of the conversation within the communities that they're hearing about this?
Yeah, I think we're letting the communities know there's a lot of things that are going on behind the scenes for the land. The land is fully our jurisdiction, Treaty of One's jurisdiction, so we don't fall under the City of Winnipeg bylaws, so that's one of the things the Treaty 1 Nation's working on right now is our own bylaws for the land and our own building codes for the land, and making sure that the building codes and the bylaws, and we also are having design guidelines coming up, that it all makes sure that it's all coherent in the whole site, and it really showcases Anishinaabe and Treaty 1.
And of course, Cody, it's Christmas time.
Yes.
Christmas season, like I said, we're at this open house, but is there any words of encouragement this time of year that you want to say to people?
Yeah, we want to, from Treaty 1, we just want to wish everyone a happy holidays, a safe new year. If you're going to drink, don't drive, and make sure you're taking safe transportation home and being safe this Christmas, and spend time with your family, and, take care of yourself. That's always a big thing.
Well, thank you for having us here today.
Thank you so much.
Yes, and back to you in the studio.
Poor TR, not a lot of snacks there by the looks of things. Well, 5 Indigenous people were the latest to be inducted into the Order of Canada on Thursday. Johnny Adams is Inuk from Kuujjuaq in northern Quebec. He was made an officer of the order. Adams is a leading business entrepreneur and pilot, and he helped transform the economic and social development of Nunavut and beyond. The next 4 recipients were all made members of the Order of Canada. Savage Bear is from the Montreal Lake Cree Nation in Saskatchewan. She brought post-secondary education to incarcerated folks, co-producing the TP Confession storytelling series. John Bocage is a pipe carrier from the Bear Clan and member of the Wasauksing First Nation. He's a respected leader, knowledge holder, pipe carrier, and former chief of the Grand Council of the Anishinaabe Nation. Elder Harvey Croshoe is from the Pequaney First Nation in Alberta. He's a retired RCMP officer and advisor on Indigenous issues of Indigenous policing and healthcare by teaching Indigenous values to clinicians, researchers, and policymakers. And Patricia Niguants is well known for preserving the Anishinaabe language for future generations. She is the author of Talking Gookum's Language, Canada's most widely used Anishinaabe textbook. Congrats to them all. That is all the time we have for your APTN National News on this Friday, December 13th. Just 12 more sleeps till the Jolly Man hopefully pays you a visit. You can always find much more by visiting our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward, Marcy Miigwech. Thanks for being with us. Stick around, our French language newscast with Kim Sullivan is up next. Have a great night.